How's it going, guys? It's the Pixelated Pumpkin, and Happy New Year, and welcome to our first video of 2023, and I could not be more excited, because in today's video, we will be taking a look at Lemax's Spooky Town building lineup for, of course, the 2023 season. Now, I was extremely surprised to see that they had unveiled everything today, because typically, they wait till late February to release all their items. But lo and behold, on the new year, they had actually dropped everything, which I was not expecting at all, so I was really excited to take a look at this new stuff today, because a lot of it is some of the best stuff they've had in years, and I'm not saying that lightly. Each year, Lemax is always bringing out some of the best villaging pieces, and each year they never have a bad one in my opinion. Every single one in its own right is really good, packed with so much detail, and just really great craftsmanship. But this year, I feel it could be a contender for one of their best years in a really long time. Because let me tell you, some of these bigger buildings, they went off with the animation. It is crazy how much they were able to pack into some of these buildings this year. So I'm very, very excited to start taking a look at them all today. But just a little disclaimer before we get right into it. They still have not unveiled the Michaels exclusive buildings yet, which I will be taking a look at later down the line when they eventually do, but that's always expected since those come out a little bit later anyways, typically around March, I'm pretty sure, or maybe they're going to release them in February this year since they definitely released these early, so we could be getting the Michaels exclusives early again. I'm really excited to be taking a look at these buildings today, so everybody, without any more hesitation, let's get started. Starting off with the big ticket item of the year, we have Phantom View Apartments, and what I mean by big ticket is typically there are one or two buildings every year that are typically the most expensive, and definitely for a good reason though, because they are gigantic and have so much animation and just so much going on with them, and for sure, Phantom View is no exception whatsoever. This is an insane piece all around. There are a million different things happening on this thing. There's so much detail, and it is just gigantic in size. It is a huge building all around. It's a mix between Ghostbusters and Tower of Terror, in my opinion, because you do have that, of course, that insane dropping elevator, which I just think looks so awesome. That is such a cool bits of animation I've ever seen on a Lemax piece. I love that. And also, I say it reminds me of Ghostbusters because of that big tower at the end of the movie that they all fight on. There's a lot of stuff and architecture that looks very similar to that, especially with the gargoyles, of course, and also just the way the building is shaped and stuff, too. It's very similar to that. So I love the blending of those two ideas going on here, and it turns out perfectly in my opinion. You have ghosts obviously invading this apartment building, doing all sorts of mundane things, just like one sitting and watching TV, others just flying around and taking a nice view out the balcony at the top there. And at the very top, we have a ghost, of course, chasing a person around, which is very funny and scary. But overall, this is just such an incredible piece. I don't know if we've seen an apartment building quite like this before from Lemax. Certainly very unique, and I love the architecture, especially, just very gothic-esque, and I don't even know what you would call that style, but overall, really awesome, and the animation is crazy. But our next building, you probably wouldn't even believe me, is actually more animated than this piece. That's right, this doesn't even come close to being the most animated piece of the year. Actually, this next one has probably a lot more, so let's take a look at it. The next building we have is another one of those big ticket items, being the Full Moon Diner. And this one has even more animation than Phantom View Apartments. And honestly, this is some of the most clever and genius uses of animation I think I've ever seen on a Lemax building. So props to them here. This is just an awesome piece all around. So let's get started talking about this incredible building. For one, the animation. Let's start right off the bat with that. At the very top, we have the Full Moon Diner logo, right next to that full moon with the wolf, of course, howling. The logo moves into the moon, covering it, and then moves back, which also makes the werewolf in that little bubble thing, I want to say, move up and down when the moon is shown, and then when it's closed again, he moves back down, which again is really genius how he's coming out to see the moon, and then once the logo covers it, he goes back down. It's really cool looking. I love how that looks. It's a great effect right there, and just looks awesome. But without a doubt, the coolest thing on this piece, the animation for the sign right below the main sign, of course. This one is genius. So it flips around to show three different signs, I want to say, or basically parts to it. So first you have the lady holding that cup of coffee, then it flips around so she changes into a werewolf, and then it even changes back to a little advertisement for the restaurant itself, which is just so cool. honestly, I love how that looks. It is such a great effect. Of course, her turning into a werewolf is genius. Just such a great use of that. This is some of the most creativity I've seen in a Lemax piece ever. I love how that works. Like, honestly, that might be my favorite thing on any piece this year. But anyways, we get down to the rest of the building, and there's even some more animation left. You have one of those little wheels that says the lunar calendar that spins as well. That is a nice touch. And of course, there's even hands sticking out from underneath a little door right there that move back and forth as well. Just an crazy amount of animation overall. And the building itself looks great too. I love the aesthetic and design it has. Of how it's not really I like how it's not really much of one of those classic 50s diners you think about, more so in tavern-esque look to it, I guess you could say, with the brick siding and stuff. Maybe it could have benefited from having one of those 50s diner aesthetics to it, but I think the animation more than well makes up for that. Overall, such an incredible piece all around. Just really, really amazing stuff from the animation department especially. Our next building definitely features a lot of animation, but I wouldn't say it goes off as hard as the last two, but definitely this one has a lot of interesting things to it, being the Mystery Meat Canning Company. Now, right off the bat, I cannot say I'm that interested in this one. The theming for me here is a little bit too out of the ordinary for it to really work. The animation is very cool though, don't get me wrong, and it's definitely one of the most unique pieces we've seen this year so far. But just to be honest, I don't know. It's a little bit too cartoony and wacky for my taste personally. So basically the story of this one is you got all these monsters basically canning human meat, or monster meat, I guess, or, well, mystery meat. But I don't know, it's a bit of a wacky piece to me. Definitely, again, very cartoony in its style. But again, tons of animation, which I really like here, especially that brain just moving around. It's just really gross looking. That's definitely very unique. But overall, the whole building structure is strange. It's a factory, but at the same time, it's kind of like this. But really, I can't say too much how I feel about this one. I think it's a little bit too cartoony, again, for my taste. But other than that, it's definitely unique. And the animation, again, once again, really good animation this year. Very unique all around. The next building we have is a classic haunted house, being the House of Shadows. Now, I like this one, especially for what you see in the windows there. Those are some really creepy looking silhouettes and outlines. I really, really love how that looks. But for the building itself, I feel like we've seen this a ton from Lemax. Definitely one of those more simple, classic haunted house pieces. I just feel like we've seen much better pieces in the same vein as this, with the old Victorian houses with creepy things inside through the windows. Again, I feel like this is maybe a cheaper or simpler alternative to the big ones that feature tons of animation. But I don't know, I think it's simple, but it works well, and there's really nothing bad I have to say about it. I really love the architecture of the building again, especially those ghosts in the windows are incredible. So overall, it's a good piece. The next building we have is really awesome and absolutely one of the best for this year without a doubt. And let me get started with my only problem with it being the name, the Haunted Aquarium. That's just a little bit basic for me, especially from Lemax, when they basically come up with some really creative and clever rhyming names for their building. So the Haunted Aquarium is kind of straight and to the point, a little bit too much for me. But obviously that does not matter in the long run, of course, just showing that my only problem with it is a tiny little nitpick like the name. Everything else going on here is so awesome. So of course this building, just like the name, is a haunted aquarium, and what it really reminds me of is one of those seaside or boardwalk attractions that feature those huge concrete statues attached to the buildings. Maybe you guys don't know what I'm talking about here, but really, if you know what I'm talking about, you know this piece is basically the incarnate of that, and it just comes out incredible, especially with that giant fish on the side, and of course that zombie fisherman as well. Just really reminds me of those old attractions you would see on boardwalks, and I think it turns out amazing here. It looks so awesome. I love this building so much. I love how it has this whole aquatic theme, of course, and they pull it off really well. Typically, I'm not too much into the aquatic theming stuff, but they really, really do it well here. I love the big statues attached to the buildings, and there's these gnarly faces that are protruding through the brick walls, which just looks so cool. And just overall, it's just so awesome, especially that big tube with the tentacles in it. It just all comes together to make perhaps one of the best aquatic buildings we've ever seen, in my opinion. It's small, but it's for sure not simple whatsoever. There's so much going on, and just a really fantastic piece overall. Just really great stuff. The next building we have is without a doubt my favorite of the year for sure, and perhaps one of the best of all time. Here we have Samantha's supernatural yard decor. Now, it's hard to put into words the reason why I love this piece so much, but I have a feeling a lot of you guys will understand the nostalgic vibes this piece gives off and just the classic Halloween feels creates. It's really tough for me to describe the way this piece makes me feel other than that, but if it makes any sense, this piece just feels like Halloween to me. It's the most pure form of Halloween put into a Lemax building possibly ever, in my opinion. Hopefully that makes sense. It probably won't. It probably sounds stupid and cheesy, but whatever. Anyways, we have these awesome, of course, yard decorations that Samantha herself is making. You could even see her with that sliding barn door over there. You could see her making some, and I really do feel like it's the art they actually made for these cardboard or wooden cutouts that really make me feel this way, the way I was describing before. They just feel so classic, like possibly maybe because, you know, in school they always decorated up the classroom with those paper cutouts they would put all over the walls and stuff, so maybe that's why it's making me feel this way, because they looked very similar to that. But also just the general vibes it gives off, it's just so good. It's so good, even when it's supposed to be simple like this. It just turns out incredible, and I love how they're scattered throughout the front yard and even on the roof and even on the walls too. It just turns out to be one of my favorite pieces, and again, hopefully you were able to understand what I was saying, but I don't know. Anyways, guys, this is definitely my favorite of the year, so let's get into our next piece. The next building we have is the Foreboding Abode, and personally, I'm not really into the fortune-telling and witch theming. They typically do 1 or 2 pieces each year to this theming. It's really not for me, though, so I'll cover this piece pretty quickly. For one, the crystal ball at the top with those little images or logos, I guess you could say, is really cool. I actually really like how they look. It's cute, and I do like the green color that it casts onto them, and I like how they're like really thin too. It almost looks like they're actually floating inside, which is cool. And I also love how the eye above the door lights up as well. That is a really creepy and cool touch. And even the candle flickering effect there looks great. I'm pretty sure they use a fan, or maybe there's a little motor in there that turns it about, but I don't know. It still looks cool. Other than that, this is just a pretty basic witch piece in my opinion, which it looks cool with all the candles, but other than that, it's simple and I don't know. It's just personally not for me, but it still looks great. The next building we have is probably my least favorite of the year, unfortunately, being the Gothic Hills Funeral Parlor. Even though it's my least favorite, it's still not bad, but I think it mainly suffers from being a been there and done that piece, meaning that it's just way too similar to too many things we've seen in the past. And for being a funeral parlor or funeral home, it looks like a castle, which I really think hinders the ability of the piece to really be its own thing, because I feel like we've seen so many castle buildings like this before, and I really think they could have went way in on the funeral home theme here and made something really original, because I don't think we've really seen that many funeral parlor or funeral home pieces before, but this just looks like another castle in my opinion, or a castle store, so I really don't like what they did with that here. I would have much preferred a more unique looking normal house as a funeral home, of course, which they do look like instead of looking like this castle. But overall, the detail is still nice, and again, it's just not for me. It's a bit of the same old vibes. The next building we have is just a standard trick-or-treat house, being the Trick or Treat If You Dare house, of course being named after that skeleton holding the banner right there. Now, I like this building, but at the same time, I think it is way too simple. I mean, we've seen so many trick-or-treat houses before, which I don't have a problem with. A lot of them have their own unique thing going on, but this one just seems very run-of-the-mill, with just a bunch of Grim Reapers standing around everywhere in the yard, and really nothing else going on. There's not even anything on the roof that's really decorated either, so I just feel like it's a little bit of an under-decorated trick-or-treat building, and more of just a normal house with a few decorations thrown on it, which is very uncommon to see on these pieces. Of course, they're always really over-decorated, I would say, which is always good, of course. You always want them to be, but this one feels a little bit under, which, I don't know, a little bit of a half-baked piece in my opinion. Again, I think it's good, but it's just something that I think could have been better. The next building we have is the first of the smaller scale buildings, I want to say. There's still, of course, the main Lemax buildings for the year, not like the accessories, but, you know, on the smaller scale now, we have Creatures of the Night Pet Shop, and I do believe last year we had some sort of pet grooming or a pet shop. It doesn't look anything like this, of course, but it was more of the human world, I would say, while this is more of the monster, kind of like over-the-top aesthetic to it. But I have to say, I don't really like this one all too much. Again, it's not bad, of course. It's just a little bit underwhelming and a little bit too basic for my liking. There really isn't too much theming with the pet shop going on besides the little indoor display. And, of course, the bat, of course, that huge bat on the thing. But other than that, I mean, it really doesn't feel like much like a pet shop to me at all. I feel like they could have went a little bit more crazy with this. Perhaps if the piece was a little bit bigger, they could have had cages with a bunch of animals all around the shop itself, which I think would have been pretty cool. But other than that, it's pretty basic, but not a bad piece by any means. Our next building is the last straw house of the Scarecrow, and this will probably be the one I'm going to purchase this year since it fits in with my general theming overall. I typically do a pumpkin patch theme. If you've seen the Spooky Town buildings I've owned, you would know that for sure. So this one fits right in, and it's a bit of a smaller piece, of course, definitely a bit more simple, but I really love this one. It's the Scarecrow's house, of course, where he has some pumpkins scattered around, and just the general design of his house is a bit whimsical, but also creepy at the same time. Obviously, you have that little sign saying Scarecrow Joe, where the Scarecrow's sitting in a rocking chair on his porch. Just a good, simple Halloween farm-themed house. But again, I could either be getting this one, or we'll still have to see what Michaels has. And of course, I might be able to pick up that Samantha's yard decor one as well, but that really doesn't fit in with my theming, so I like to keep stuff that stays true to my theming, but we'll just have to see. But anyways, I'm really liking this one, of course, and hopefully I cannot wait to get it. Our next buildings, yes, buildings, we have 4 that fall into this new line known as the cottages, which they border on the line of accessories, if I'm being honest. They're just really tiny buildings, but I'm gonna say they are actual buildings for just the sake of this. But anyways, there are 4 new ones, being the skeleton one, the pumpkin one, the witch one, and of course the ghost one. Now, I actually like these quite a bit. I don't think I'll be getting any of them, but they all look great. I really like how the skeleton one looks like a cabin, very creepy with all the bones, very macabre. The witch one is cool with the tree especially. The pumpkin one is pretty simple. We've seen so much stuff like that before, so it's really nothing new, just a little bit smaller than all the other buildings that are literally just pumpkins. And the ghost one is basically a tiny little Victorian house with tons of ghosts all over it. If I'm to say which one's my favorite, I really don't know. It's definitely between the witch and the ghost one for sure. They're all pretty good and very nice options if you are needing something very small for your Spooky Town village and you don't really want to start with any of the big budget pieces. Now we're done with the main buildings and moving on to accessories, and here we have a nice little bridge, which of course reminds me of the 2017 Spirit Halloween theme, but this is great, a nice little accessory. I'm not sure really which theming for the other buildings it would go with. Typically the accessories kind of match up with something from this year, but I don't know which one this would go with. I feel like it's kind of just more of a generic one, but that's perfectly fine. I think it looks great and creepy. Now, I should have mentioned I won't be going into every accessory. I've only picked out a few that I really like, and here we have one called the Newly Deads. This one is awesome. I love how the horse has bat wings. That is so cool. And I love how the guy driving the horse, or riding the horse, is a plague doctor. That is something we've not seen from Lemax as far as I'm concerned. And then I like how the couple is a vampire couple with the coffin in the back, of course. Looking awesome. Really great stuff from this piece right here. Here we have my absolute favorite figure of the year, which I'm getting 100% being Evil Ed's pumpkin patch, or he's kind of a pumpkin vendor almost. I love the pumpkin figure that Ed is, of course, and he has a nice little carriage with the pumpkins on it. I love his face. I love how he's holding that axe. A fantastic little pumpkin patch accessory right here. For sure getting this one without a doubt. And our final little figure that I'm going to talk about is this Gravedigger right here. Only reason why I chose to put this guy on is because he's literally dressed up exactly like the Home Depot Gravedigger animatronic. Instead of holding a lantern, he's holding a bag of bodies, and his face isn't green. That is pretty much the only differences from this guy. A really great figure all around, though. I love how it looks. Alrighty, everybody, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I really do appreciate it, and let me know what you guys think of the Lemax Spooky Town 2023 lineup. In your opinion, which one is your favorite? I'm really interested to hear your guys' overall thoughts and your thoughts on the individual pieces in the comments below. So please let me know. I'll try to respond to as many as I can. But anyways, guys, I've really enjoyed talking about these. Again, my favorites are without a doubt the Samantha's Supernatural Yard Decor and the Scarecrow Shack. Overall, some really great pieces from Lemax this year. I'm going to be honest, there were not too many pieces that I really, felt iffy on. I like all of them for the most part, and I think it's been a really solid year. But remember, we still have the Michaels exclusives to look forward to, so we're not quite done from Lemax yet. So I'll be doing a video on that when the Michaels exclusives inevitably come out, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. So be sure to subscribe and like to stay tuned, and also be sure again to let me know what you guys think of these pieces. And that is pretty much it, everybody. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, this is the Pixelated Pumpkin signing out.